Hey everyone, welcome to Handing the Shame Back. This show is dedicated 100% to the adults in Aotearoa and across the world who have experienced child sexual abuse. There are many of us out there. We know that the numbers aren't getting smaller, and in fact we need to be aware that our beautiful tamariki and raratangi are still experiencing this in our New Zealand and across the world. So we've got a fabulous guest today, and before I introduce her, please know there's a trigger warning on this. As with all shows, we're bringing you truth, you see, and we're bringing you people's experiences, and we share survivor stories, not to horrify you, but because you may watch and learn one thing or feel an affinity with what was said, and it may help you. So I've got an amazing Kimi Parata joining us today. She's a mother, Wahine toa, very strong, beautiful mum, and she is also a survivor. And welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gloria.
So look,
Hi everyone.
As with all beginnings, you know, it's important for us to understand your story so that the beautiful survivors watching us and joining us will maybe get a little bit of hope or hear something that you say and think, oh, me as well, or oh my gosh, I can so relate. So on that basis, and with absolute araha and respect to you, may we please start with what your story of child sexual abuse is?
Okay, so with me, it started at a very young age. I can't actually say the age, I can't remember, but I was young, very, very young. I was a little girl wearing skirts and dresses, and I remember I wasn't in nappies, so I think I would have been around 5 years old. So the first time it ever started with me is when me and my mother lived together in a little flat, and there was a man living upstairs, and I was one of those children that loved to go out and play outside and get my hands dirty and explore. That's the child I was. See, my mum had left my father, so we were alone. Mum was a very hardworking lady who was always tired, so there were times where I would run outside and she would never know. So the first time it happened to me, I remember running upstairs, and there was a man upstairs who actually invited me into his home. And the way he done this, though, is that he was offering me, I remember, lollies and chocolate and stuff like that. And as a child, I'm like, wow,
Yes.
yum, like, wow, this is a child's, dream come true. This is Christmas. That's how I was thinking in my head. And I just remember glimpses, even to this day, of me going into this man's house. And I didn't know him from a bar of soap, but I remember he kept watching me for days on end. So I went into this guy's house. There was no chocolate or no lollies there whatsoever. And I just remember sitting with this man on the floor, and he was saying to me, "Can we play a game?" I said, "What kind of game?" And he goes, "You just open your legs." So he opened my legs, and he just went around in circles like this, touching my private area, and as well as his own, and just going around in circles. And I didn't know what was happening at this stage. I really didn't know that, that it was wrong. And I didn't feel any, like, as a child, I didn't feel any type of, I don't know, like sexual pleasure or anything like that at all. And he done this for quite a long time, just going around in circles until it went into my little, undies that I was wearing. And one significant thing I remember him doing was asking me to come to his bed and lie on my stomach. And I done that. I lay down on his stomach, but luckily he had all his clothes on. And that's what I remember from the first time ever starting when it comes to that kind of thing, sexual abuse or, stuff like that.
Yeah.
He was on my back, this big grown man, while I was lying down on my stomach. And I remember the feeling of, it felt like humping. He was humping me while I was lying down on my stomach.
So he certainly knew what he was doing. He certainly took advantage of you as a small child not understanding, because what child does understand, and nor should they understand.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And I still, when I think about it, I still have those glimpses, even though I was such a young child, it's still there.
those flashbacks, yeah.
Yeah, the flashbacks are still there, and I remember that happening to me, but I don't remember telling anyone or my mother.
So do you think he bribed you, or do you think he might have threatened you to keep quiet, or you just knew not to speak? What do you think?
I I can't remember. I really can't remember. I don't think he threatened me. I think he bribed me to come in the first place, and then done what he did to me. And I, I, I really can't remember if he told me to keep my mouth shut or anything like that. But I don't remember telling my mum or anyone. I kept it to myself.
Yeah. Yes, and you're not alone, Kimmy. There's our survivors, some of our survivors watching will be nodding, and yes, they will completely understand that, because there is no path that we follow for every one of us beautiful survivors. What we went through, although similar, may not have been exactly the same. And as children, we didn't have the ability to make sense of any of it. So I get that. Well, as you then got older, did that carry on with him, or yeah?
No, it stopped because we moved.
Yes.
So the thing with me and my mother, we moved a lot. We never stayed in a place very long, only because my father would always come and find us. My mum would always run away, type of thing. So we ended up all over the place. That stopped, luckily. It stopped. And when I remember, the man was actually old. He was actually quite old. And yeah, we moved on, but the sexual abuse never stopped throughout my life. It continued.
So no matter where you moved to, there was always somebody else who was prepared to take advantage. Were most of these people known to you, Kimmy, or were there some that were strangers, or how would you describe that?
So the one I've just mentioned with the old man, I didn't know him from a bar of soap. He was just a neighbour. I didn't know him. But the ones that continued on after that, I knew. I personally knew.
Okay. So were
Yeah.
they like family members or friends of Whānau, or?
Yeah. So one was my brother-in-law, who was actually my sister's partner. She had a babe. She had a son to him. It started with him as well. So to me, he was my brother-in-law.
Yes. Oh, and I can only imagine the confusing emotions that would have brought up in you, because if you tell your sister, what will she believe?
Exactly.
You don't tell your sister, but trying to protect her, but then are you wrong for doing that? So how old were you when that all began with your brother-in-law, and at what stage did that end for you with him?
I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
I was 10 years old, and I remember it very clearly. We were staying here in Hamilton. Me and my mum had a house. My sister and her partner had come to visit. I remember mum saying we needed a milk, and he said he'll go to the shop. and I go for a ride. So I did. I went for a ride with him to the shop. And I thought, oh, yeah, it's all good. Yay, I get to go for a ride and maybe get me some stuff at the shop. Anyway, we head to the shop, but instead of going to the shop, he reverses back into this, like these buildings, and down this long alleyway, he reversed all the way back down there. And I sort of looked at him and I thought, what are we doing? What are we doing here? And that's when it happened. He just took full advantage of me. He come on to me very strongly, like didn't really say anything, very little talk, more action. So for me, this was more on a different level from the first time it ever happened to me.
Yeah.
This was more aggressive.
Yes.
Yeah, and he just come on to me. He just shoved his fingers down my pants and just shoved his fingers up there. And I just remember screaming because it was sore. I remember crying because it was sore. And he just continued and carried on. And while he was doing that to me, he was masturbating. And
So
I
he
remember
knew what he was doing, and he knew that you wouldn't say anything. Did he threaten you not to speak? Yeah.
he told me not to tell my sister. He said she'll hate me.
Yeah.
I remember, even though I'm 10 years old, because I love my sister,
Yes.
and even though I was 10 years old, he said, if you tell your sister, she'll hate you. And I didn't want that. I was so scared. I was so confused. I was so frightened.
Yes.
I felt so alone.
Yes. It's so frightening and so confusing. I think, I love what you're saying, because the thing is, I think for survivors who are watching and listening to this, that's one thing that often isn't brought up. So thank you. The confusion. I think people don't always, we don't explore that enough. That as children and as a child of 10, it's this confusion is overwhelming, because what do you do if you choose to speak of it? There's terrible consequences. If you don't choose to speak of it, it gets left with you. And
That's right.
yeah, so how did you manage to, yeah, what happened? I imagine as children we don't talk, but our behavior will show. What happened
That's
with?
it. That's right. You just hit it on the nail there. I remember when we drove back home, we didn't even have the milk that we were supposed to go and get. And I remember my sister coming outside, and I remember acting really, really weird, just not myself. And
Yes.
she knew, she felt something, she could pick it up. Like, what's going on here? There's something going on here, but I couldn't tell her. I couldn't do it at that stage. I didn't have enough
Mm.
strength, and I was scared. I didn't want to lose her. I didn't want her to hate me or blame me.
A lot for a little one to carry. You did amazing. You did what you needed to at that point. So
So I shut my mouth at that stage.
well done.
I
Well, you
shut my mouth.
need to. As you got older, I imagine you were able to share it with her.
Yes. I
How?
remember I remember telling her, it was really hard, but she was really angry.
Yeah.
She was really, really angry because I think she loved him. That was her kid's father, you see. And it kind of pushed us away from each other. And I remember seeing them at the courthouse because I took him to court for it. It took me a while to do this, but I finally done because I felt like it was the right thing to do. I didn't want other people or other children to suffer.
No. Congratulations.
So,
What a lot of courage that would have taken.
so I stood up and I took him to court. And I went to court and I saw my sister, and it was so hard because she gave me the cold shoulder and she just looked so hurt. She was like dying inside. That's what it looked like.
Mm.
And it was just a really tough situation for us, as sisters and blood, and just how much love we had for each other. And yeah, I finally done what I had to do, and I sent him to jail. Yeah.
Oh, Kimmy, love to you. It's
Mm,
it would have broken your heart, your sister. Perhaps. How old were you when you finally told her?
12.
Oh, okay. So it was a couple of years later. And
It wasn't like far as down the thing. It was about 12 because I couldn't hold it anymore.
and were you able? i- Is the relationship okay with you two now?
Yes.
Look at that beautiful
It
smile.
is. Me and my sister are as strong as ever before right now. Yes.
That's beautiful.
I love my sister. I do. She's my older sister. She's very protective. And, you know, we forgive, it's about forgiving as well for ourselves too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're at a good place, me and my sister. Yeah.
She obviously believes you, and she's obviously made all that right with you. And interesting, what a brave, beautiful little girl. Yeah. You just
Yeah.
what courage you showed to do that at 12 when you knew, you may not have the support of everybody about this. And you went ahead and you did it. That's amazing. Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
tough and hard. And we don't, in our country anyway, we don't often get convictions for this. Children are still not believed, believe it or not, to this
I
day.
know.
Yeah. You raised something, and I love what you've said. You've said, and to forgive ourselves. And I just wanted to say, forgiveness is big for us as survivors. And I always say to survivors, don't do anything you don't want to do. Like, no one should tell you to forgive anything. If you feel you want to, go for it. If
Yeah.
you feel you don't, go for it. You don't have to do anything. I think as survivors, sometimes people, well meaning people, will say, oh no, you have to forgive. Actually, if you forgive because you're forced to, come here, I'd love to know what you think of this. I don't believe it's a genuine act of forgiveness.
I agree. I agree. I do. You've got to do something because you want to do it for yourself, not because someone's telling you to do it, because then therefore it's not meaningful.
No.
No.
It's interesting because the second part of that is it took me forever to forgive my abusers, and there were many of them. But I only forgave because the hatred and the anger and the injustice of it was burning me up. So I forgave to take the pressure off me. I did it for
Yeah.
me.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, quite powerful, eh?
Yes. Very powerful.
As you got older and you put one pedophile behind bars, thank you from all of us watching. But as you got older and you got through the court case and that all happened, were you safe from that point, or was it just a continuing story of more? Yeah.
The one that I'm about to talk about next was one of the hardest ones for me in my whole entire life, um, because it was a family member.
Yeah.
And not only that, I had just lost my father after the court case with my sister. Our father had passed away. Um, so I was dealing with grief at that time, grief and loss, plus all the trauma from the sexual abuse. And then I got placed into the care of my uncle and auntie, which is my father, who passed away, his brother, his oldest brother. I got placed there and that's where it started again.
So how old were you at that point? Were you 13 or
I was 14 years old.
10? Okay.
I was 14 years old. I remember going to high school, starting high school there, Aotearoa High School in Christchurch, and they came. My auntie and uncle were supposed to be a safe place for me to go to. They wanted me to stay with family instead of child, youth, and families care.
Oh, go
And
figure.
so I thought, my father just passed. I need to be around his family, his oldest brother at that, and that's what I done. I stayed there. Everything was fine when I first got there, but then it just went downhill. It just flipped, and that's when my whole life turned upside down.
Okay, man. Was your auntie aware, do you think?
No, she wasn't. She wasn't aware of anything. It actually started when she went to a funeral. She went away for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So it all started, well, when she left and left me home with my uncle. I thought I was safe, but I wasn't. I wasn't safe at all.
How did you manage, how did you emotionally, but and with behavior again, like what were you able to do? How did you manage to cope, I guess?
I was numb.
Yeah.
I just remember being numb. Just didn't feel myself. I just felt lost. Um, yeah, that's how I remember feeling, just really closed off.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, why does this keep happening to me? What am I doing wrong? Like, what's wrong with me? That's what I started thinking
Well,
at the stage.
yeah. And now when you look back, you think there
I
was
was an innocent, I was innocent child. No one deserves that. No child deserves that.
well, no child should have to experience that. It's
Yeah.
it's actually it's not okay. And that obviously that continued until you were able to leave home or yeah.
So it continued for over that 2 weeks that she was gone.
Yeah.
Um, every day I would go to school, I would come back, and he would do that to me. He would force me to watch pornography. I
Oh,
couldn't leave the TV. I had to sit there and watch it for at least an hour or pretty long time, and then he would take me to the bedroom and have his way with me. It was the first time someone had ever, um, what do you call it, had sexual intercourse with me without my consent.
yeah.
Was my own uncle.
He raped you.
He raped me. Yeah, yeah.
And I'm so sorry, Kimmy, and wh- I'm trying to find the words. Were you able to share that with anyone, or you knew better just to keep quiet?
I kept quiet for a while, and I just remember the more it happened, the more that I started thinking suicide.
Yes, of
Every
course.
single day he was doing it to me, and I would go to school like a dead person. That's how I was feeling. I would go to school. I couldn't focus.
Oh,
I would be quiet. You know, I'd be very jumpy, very jumpy. I remember being very jumpy at school, and I trusted no one. I trusted nobody, not even the teachers, because I knew what I would be getting home to.
yes.
I knew that was what was going to happen to me.
Yeah.
And until I went to school and finally told my friend, I wrote a letter while we were in science group. I remember this. I wrote a letter and I told her exactly what happened. She gave that letter to the nurse, and that's how it came about. That's how legally, things started happening.
So you could be removed from the home?
Yes. So what happened is that I got what do you call it when they look over you and stuff with lights and all that kind of stuff?
A scan.
Yeah, I got scanned and combed and everything, and they went around to my uncle's and auntie's home. They went in with infrared lights and they just found a lot of evidence, and he was charged. He was charged. Yeah.
Did he go to jail?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. I mean, gosh, it's silly to say, but good on you. You brought up three really important things, and I just you're doing great, by the way, Kimi. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Yeah.
for korero and honesty. I really appreciate it. The You've mentioned several things, about how you just became really quiet, you got jumpy, and you could trust no one. You've just described three of the hallmarks of child sexual abuse, and what we do as survivors to this day. We have that jumpy, that hypervigilance. Yeah, we know who's behind us, who's around,
Yeah.
who's towards us. The trust is hard, because why would you trust when you've had not one, not two, but three people who you knew, kind of, I know the initial one was a neighbor, but who breached that trust just as easily as they could, and they did. And then the other was what we know with children is the behavior shows us. So you just got quieter. And so for our beautiful survivor family watching, those are things that appear in us as children. And I'm here to say that as adult survivors, there will still be times when those things are still with us. I'm sure Kimi will agree.
Yeah.
Please know that what you went through, it's simply just affirming or confirming that you never made anything up. This happened, and it happened to you. So if you can, twist it around to an affirmation. I trust myself. I trust what my kids share with me. And, the fact that you did something else, which I think is hugely important for kids, you wrote something down, because the key to that is there's this whole thing out there, Kimmy, that kids should be able to speak. No kid's going to speak. But what they'll do is they'll show us in their behavior, or they might write it down. And I think that's a valuable thing you've shared with us. So,
I think for me, I wrote it down because I found it hard to voice it.
yes.
I found it really, really hard to talk about it. And the only way I could express my emotions was through pen and paper. And I gave it to a friend who I trusted, who I hung out with every single day at that school. And she knows who she is. If she ever sees this video, she'll know. She was there for me, and she's the one that helped me to, I guess, get out of the situation I was in, to get removed from the home.
But what a beautiful friend. I imagine at the time it didn't feel like that, though. But
I told her to read it and keep it to herself, but she didn't. She read it and she took it further, and I'm so grateful she done that. As of today, when I look back, she done the right thing.
she really did. And, it all began with your courage. So pat on the back. I think, a beautiful survivor you are. You were able to dig deep and get into a place where you were able to share it. And I'm so happy for you that you could do that. And I just want to share that with our survivors watching. Some of us could do that and some of us couldn't. And I'm
Yeah.
Kimmy agrees. you're not better if you can, and you're not less if you can't. It just is what it was and what it is. And I think too, we must honour whatever we did or didn't do, because we're all unique and we're all on this journey together. We stand beside each other.
We do.
Kimmy, looking back, is there anything, you've given a nod to your beautiful friend, and thank you, whoever you are, you know who you are. We need more friends like you in the world. So,
Christina's your name.
oh, bless. Shout out to Christine. And for you, once you were able to get that conviction, were you then able to relax a little bit, or did it just keep going?
For me, because I had to be in court when he was convicted, it
Yeah.
was really hard for me because his whole family, I mean, his wife and her whole family hated my guts.
Yeah.
They completely called me a liar, said I was making it up. It wasn't true. He would never do anything like that. And they just sent me messages of threats and just, things like that. So I had to completely block them right out where they couldn't get a hold of me.
Good.
So that's where I last left it. I remember just leaving it like that and just moving back to my mum.
Yeah. And that's so painful, because it's at that point that you're needing a whānau or friends or people around you to help support the brave decision to take it further. And you know
Yeah,
what courage you had to find and what depths you had to go to. So we're very honoured to have you with us today.
thank you, Gloria.
Yeah, it's quite powerful. You've got a beautiful spirit, Kimi, and I see you. Um, from that point, were you then safe? Were you then able to be safe?
Yeah, I believe from that point on was coming back to my mum and kind of, being around her again. I was safer at this point.
And
Yeah.
and yeah, so I guess what has helped you as an adult to recover from all of this trauma? What's helped?
I think definitely being a mother, having children, and I guess wanting the best for them and just giving them love, giving them as much love as possible, um, because I don't want them to ever have to experience what I've been through.
No.
And so for me, my kids are my number one.
Yes.
They are the ones that keep me strong. They're the ones that keep me on track and that give me, I guess, that reason and purpose. So definitely my children.
Oh, how beautiful. You're such an emotionally available mum and Wahine Toa, and that you are also, you know, aware enough. Your lessons have
Mm,
been learned, because you're not repeating the cycle of them being
mm,
available to others. Yeah.
yeah. And I think another one for me too is just, I guess, my faith as well.
Yeah.
It's also a big thing as well. It's just my faith and just having trust in and just believing that everything's going to be okay and that, you know, I pray a lot as well.
Yeah.
And I was also baptized by choice. It's something that I wanted to do for myself and my family to start a new life, pretty much, just to, let go of the old and just focus on the new and where we are now. So, yeah, my faith and just trusting in the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And,
Mm.
it's interesting. We can find it in ourselves to do that for our beautiful tamariki, our children.
Yeah,
We can do that. Sometimes it's harder for us to do it for ourselves, yeah? But
yeah, that's right.
there's something about being a mother, I think, that can create that. And for the beautiful male survivors watching, for you amazing dads as well, there'll be such strong protective instincts coming out in you. Is there
Mm.
anything else about your a story that you would like to share, or that you feel might would be useful for our wonderful audience to know?
Um, I think, just summing up on my story, what I've shared is just that, you know, we all go through something in life. Um, and although it was, quite a dark, tough place to be in, I've I've gained the strength over the years. Back then I think I was quite weak, weak in opening my mouth or reaching out for help and, all that kind of stuff. But today I'm a lot more stronger as a mother and as a person. I'm more strong minded.
Mm.
I open up my mouth, I'm not afraid to. Um, and that's something that, that I love is having a voice to use to speak out.
And I think that's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
You, you know, though, I'm just going to challenge you a little bit. You were never weak. You were put in situations that were almost impossible to navigate. Um, I'm so pleased that the suicidal thoughts didn't go anywhere. But if you managed to put not one but two of your abusers, two pedophiles behind bars, thank you. That is not a show of weakness, that is a show of strength. And I know as a survivor and as survivors, which this channel is for, we do get a little bit sick of this, don't we, Kimmy? People say, "Oh, you're so strong." Really? What
Yeah.
what choice was there?
Yeah. I can relate to you there. Like when people say it a lot to me, you're such a strong woman and stuff like that. I'm like, I just did what I had to do.
We
Yeah.
we should never have been put in any of those situations.
No.
And people took full advantage, knowingly took full advantage. So you had the pedophiles, because they're pedophiles.
Yes.
Then you had the gatekeepers, who are the people I consider to be around them, who just don't want to hear it and don't want to believe it. So they're the gatekeepers, because what it means is they're the ones that allow what happened to not be believed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
so
does.
they're protecting the pedophile, the abuser. And so, the silence is ensured. And so once again, as survivors, what happens is we then get shut down, called a liar,
Yeah.
told that we're troublemakers, told that, oh, it's always you, isn't it? um, shut down, made wrong, made bad, made evil, made
Yeah.
deluded. Pick a label. And the thing is, as survivors, we've had this year forever and a day. And then when we finally emerged through, I'd be interested in your take on this, Kimmy. When we finally emerged through with confidence and strength, people say, "Oh, do you still have to talk about it? Wasn't that years ago?"
Yes, yes, yes.
So what do you make of that?
Well, they say, why are you bringing up the past for, or stuff like that? Um,
Because it shaped my whole life.
yeah, well, I always bring it down to because I want to help people.
Yeah,
You know, that's the whole reason behind why I might bring up, certain parts of my life or in stories and stuff that I share. You know, it's because I want to help people.
100%. And I think too, for our survivors, I want people to feel they can open their mouths and share because we were shut down for so long. We were told not to speak. We were,
That's right.
yeah, whether we were threatened or not. The worst thing for a survivor to hear is, "Oh, wasn't that years ago? Do you really need to?" You know? So look, just as we're going into close, and we've got to see the humor in this team because, we're people too. But Kimmy, what advice would you give to perhaps survivors who are struggling to deal with what their experience was?
Darlings, you are not alone. You're not alone in this world. There are people like us, ourselves, many others who have been through the same or even worse. Um, just know that there is someone out there that cares about you, that loves you, um, and that, it's okay to ask for help. If you need help, it's okay to ask for help. Do you focus on you and what you need? Don't worry about other people. You focus on you. Get yourself right. Get yourself well.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Kimmy. Please stay there. Hey, beautiful ones. Amazing guest. And, Kimmy said a lot, but what I really have picked up on is that, the two things that helped her were being a mother and having faith. And it doesn't mean you have to convert to any particular religion. You can have your own spiritual faith.
Yes.
With faith is it is bigger than you. You believe in something bigger than yourself because sometimes, just sometimes, we need to hand it over and it can get a bit much. So I think that's powerful. The other thing I think is that for this wonderful survivor, she managed to speak out enough, whether through writing or using words, that two pedophiles were put away. And I just think that's phenomenal as a child to be able to do that. So thank you, and amazing, Kimmy. As we're closing out, to the beautiful survivors that you all are, I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you.